Are you ready for some rapid fire?
I am, and I apologize for my mini whiteboard segment there. I just my tools were not cooperating with me, but I hope everyone understood what I was trying to get at.
We're going to have to fix your whiteboard for next time, but that's
Yes,
okay.
I will practice it.
All right. Yeah, we do kind of have to keep moving because we have the interview coming up here in a little bit as well. So first, we appreciate like the guys on and gals on the board have been awesome because they've been providing us some good content for rapid fire. So that's where I saw this on our Champions Lounge. There's this girl on TikTok who has what she calls her Red Flags Football Edition. She gives tips to girls who are interested in guys who like sports. Have you seen this by any chance?
I haven't. I think it's kind of
Okay.
funny though.
Okay. So one of her red flags that she lists, she went through this list of red flags. If he thinks Marcus Freeman is going to win a national championship at Notre Dame before Brian Kelly wins one at LSU, that's a red flag, she says. Your thoughts on that, Jesse?
I think that first and foremost, it is not a red flag, and it seems that whoever this is kind of following the Brian Kelly trend of the way he kind of said why he departed Notre Dame and why he wanted to go on.
More on that to come. More on that to come in the next question. But yeah.
And so it just feels like that it was just kind of following the crowd in some regards, right? It's like, oh, well, of course, LSU is going to have a better opportunity. They play in the SEC. They won a national championship not too long ago. Brian Kelly made the statement that he can't recruit there and blah, 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 blah. I just feel like that's an easy, clickable thing that's just like, oh, if I say this, no one's going to be like, oh, this chick doesn't know what she's talking about.
Well,
or, oh,
the bigger question is, do you think LSU is going to win a national championship before Notre Dame wins a national championship? Because obviously, the gist of that topic is, you're crazy if you think that that's going to happen.
So I don't. I'm gonna put it like this, and I know that we're all Notre Dame fans here. If I'm a betting man and I had to place two futures, I would feel more comfortable saying that LSU would win it before Notre Dame did, and that's not a dig at anyone, Notre Dame or anything specifically. I just look at what Brian Kelly accomplished last season as a first-year head coach and getting an influx of a second-year group, beating Alabama last year, all the things that he did. I would say that at the end of the day, they're pretty even. But if I had to lean towards one way or the other, I would say that LSU stood a little bit better of a chance.
I mean, facts are facts. LSU has won 3 championships in the last 20 years. Notre Dame's only won 1 in the last 35. I mean, love the way recruiting is going for Marcus Freeman right now. I think we were all a little bit shocked with the record Brian Kelly pulled down there at LSU in year 1, but they're still talking about what the SEC is going to do with their scheduling. If they're going to go to a 9-game schedule with the expansion once Texas and Oklahoma come aboard, and they're talking about 3 permanent opponents per year, and one of those permanent opponents is going to be for LSU is going to be Alabama. It's going to be Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Now, that's not necessarily a murderer's row, just those 3, but obviously Alabama, as long as Nick Saban is there, is, it's a tougher road for Brian Kelly, for one. I don't, I said when he left, I guess I can understand, because when you look at the fact that Les Miles and Ed Orgeron have won 2 of those national championships, I do think Brian Kelly is a better head coach than both. You can see why he would, kind of be wanting to make that move, because he obviously thinks recruiting is easier down there. But the numbers say LSU has the better chance. My gut tells me I don't think LSU has the better chance between the 2. I like the way Notre Dame continues to trend, and if I had a sawbuck or 2 to lay down it, I would slide it over to the Irish before I would put it on the Tigers. 2 other things in that I thought were funny, and again, yes, we're talking about TikTok. I thought it was some funny stuff. That's why we brought it up, and it was Notre Dame related. But another red flag, if he thinks Deion Sanders is going to win 7 games at Colorado this season, I mean, I can all get behind that because that's red flag. And if he thinks Jimbo Fisher is going to give the full reins of his offense to Bobby Petrino, another red flag. I mean, there's some fairly solid points in there, even if she is a pretty obvious SEC supporter. So I thought it was funny stuff.
Yeah, I do too, and it just kind of shows, the reach now that a lot of these I guess you would call like social entertainers, whatever social personalities are kind of getting. You're seeing a lot of people and Colorado has a solid chance to get to 7 recruits that Deion's bringing in. I think of those 3, I think that has the highest opportunity in my opinion.
You think year 1 Deion's got a chance to get him to 7 wins?
I do actually.
Oof,
I do.
Man, I don't know. That's a big ask in year 1, even if it is the Pac-12. So speaking of Brian Kelly, he was on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and he had this to say about leaving Notre Dame for LSU with the Irish in the middle of a college football playoff chase. About a year and a half ago now at this point. Quote, I think that's overblown a little bit. We weren't right in the middle of it. We kind of knew where we were going to be in terms of that, but that's neither here nor there. End quote. Fair or foul? Fair or BS, actually. BK's comments, Jess.
I think those are predominantly pretty fair. I mean, let's be honest. Notre Dame at the time had, 2 losses. They don't have a conference championship to fall back on. So was there like a chance, an opportunity? Sure. But I think we all understood predominantly that wasn't going to happen. And so if you say, everyone, if you say that you're pissed off because he left in the middle of a potential, college football playoff berth, I think there was like a 10% chance, but I think we all predominantly understood based on Notre Dame's past, on how they've gotten in and when they've fallen short, that a 2-loss Notre Dame team more than likely wasn't going to go in. So I think that what he said is predominantly fair at the end of the day.
Well, here's the problem, though, because it's easy for him after the fact, to say this now, a year and a half later. In the moment he did it, remember, this was right after the Stanford game, and the conference championship games had yet to be played. The conference championship games were the following weekend. Notre Dame was ranked 6th in the playoff standings at that time. Oklahoma State is 1 spot ahead of them at number 5. And again, BK takes the job before the conference championship games. What happens in the conference championship games? Oklahoma State loses to Baylor in the Big 12 title game. And so when that happened, the SEC championship game after that, if Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC title game, Notre Dame's going to be in the playoffs. Whether they were going to succeed in the playoffs or not, Notre Dame was going to be in the playoffs. So I call total BS on this. To say that it's overblown, he's saying it's overblown that people say, he left Notre Dame while the Irish were in the chase for the playoff. They were still in the thick of things. And, I don't want to beat a dead horse because we've kind of beaten this, but he was asked about this week and he did answer it. And that's how he answered it, by saying that it was overblown. It was not overblown. It was fairly blown is what it was, because they were in the thick of the playoff race and he bolted. So that's, all that happened before, he took the job before all of that happened, waiting for the results to happen. His team was ranked number 6 in the country with a chance to make the playoffs still. Go ahead.
No, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a good look that he just bolted out the door after building up this program for, however many prior years, when his team stood a good shot at the national level and definitely at the New Year's Six bowl game level. And it's just, I'll never understand his departure. I think, again, not to beat a dead horse, but the way he departed after everything that went into his tenure at this university is the thing that's always going to shock me the most. Because
10-year, he had 12-year.
But it just feels like,
Ricky Henderson.
It just felt like all this spite all of a sudden. And it's like, there was no spite, like you built your family and so many other things here. And it's like, he acted like Notre Dame just kicked him out, but he was the one who just kicked Notre Dame out and was like, I'm done with this place altogether.
And like Tommy Gunn said, I'm not pissed he left, F him. And that's like, no one was in the moment when it happened. There was that initial shock, like people couldn't believe it. And then, as the information started to come out on how he handled it with the team and all these other things, that's when people really just said, all right, whatever. And I do think that for the long term, where Notre Dame is right now and where they can be, I do think when you have a guy who needs to basically go coupon clipping, to do his recruiting, he needs it more convenient for him so that it's not as hard, on him to go out and do his recruiting. You're better off with a guy who's willing to do the work, because as we've seen from Marcus Freeman and the staff, they're more than willing to do the work, and it's paying much higher dividends than what it was paying when Brian Kelly was here. And I mean, just look at the quarterback position. We talked in detail about how different the 1 through 4, the quarterback room looks right now compared to even a year ago, let alone really at any point, I think, during the Kelly era. So I think it's just going to continue to reap rewards down the road.
Oh yeah, the state of the program overall is just in so much better shape. It's just like you just feel so much more positivity and just like caring and compassion first and foremost of players and coaching staff and everything. Like it just doesn't feel like there's any animosity. Like I think you could go up to every person and ask every player and ask them about Marcus Freeman, and they'd have something nice to say. And I don't think you could say the same for Brian Kelly if you went up and asked every player about how they felt about their head coach.
So the NFL Sunday Ticket, of course, we knew it was leaving DirecTV after more than 2 decades. It's going to YouTubeTV this season, and YouTube released its prices for the package this week. Whoo, man. I mean, buckle up.
I might take out a loan.
If you're a current YouTube TV subscriber, it's going to cost you $349 for the season, an extra $40 to add on Red Zone. Non-YouTube TV subscribers will pay $449 for the season and the extra $40 for Red Zone. They are offering $100 off if you subscribe before June 6th. Is it worth it, Jesse, for what you have to pay for Sunday Ticket? I had Red Zone on my mind for some reason, but for Sunday Ticket.
No, I mean, this is extraordinary. So you're telling me that because I have Hulu and Netflix and like Apple TV, and I don't have YouTube TV, I have to pay $450 for the ticket, and then if I want Red Zone, $40. So you're basically telling me I need to pay $500, $1,000 just to have every football game the entire season. I think that's ridiculous. Those prices are absurd. And just to put it into comparison,
it's more. It's not a whole lot more, but it is more than what you had to pay with DirecTV. There's like. It's a premium price,
Right. And just to put it into comparison, I mean, I signed up for MLB TV this year. That's $150 for the whole year. That's 162 games for every team. Like, I mean, that's ridiculous. I know that like baseball isn't as frequent and as much as football, and like the demand or whatever isn't nearly as high. But I mean, come on, I get $150. I get every game for every, throughout the entire year. And I bought a VPN so I can watch my local teams too.
Let me ask it differently, because Father's Day is coming up. My birthday is in October. Is your dad worth the price?
I was going to send it to you and ask if you were going to buy it, because that's a lot of money.
It's really got me thinking, and I'll have to sit back and look at some things. And I know, like, I heard some people talking about this on one of the sports media podcasts about, like, if you're a Cowboys fan or if you're a fan of, one of the premier teams like the Cowboys, the Steelers, maybe not as much the Patriots anymore because they aren't as good, but like a lot of the, like the Cowboys are going to be on a lot of national games. And, they were trying to make the case that, well, it's only 1 or 2 games that you would have to miss if you're a fan of one of those teams because they're on national TV that much. And that's
I'd say it's like
an
50-50.
exaggeration. It's still about half the schedule that you're like, if you want to watch every game, it's about half the schedule. My issue is once November rolls around and I've got basketball commitments, they're playing games every Sunday. So, it's like, I don't know what to do, because what happens is I do get pissed off when I'm sitting here on Sunday and the Cowboys are playing and all I've got is the crappy Bears or a Lions game on TV or a Colts game. And I want to watch the Cowboys. That's how I ended up with Sunday Ticket for as long as I did. So it's a real dilemma for me because I want to watch my team, which is why Sunday Ticket, they know they have you over a barrel, because for that very reason, even if Dallas is going to have a lot of the primetime slots, it's still about half the schedule that I'm going to have to try to watch. It's distressing, Jesse.
Well, it's also like very distressing. I understand. I understand you're hurt right now. So the way I look at it too is, say you go the route of, what, screw it, I'm not going to get it. I'll just go to the local bar and find the game on. Well, by the time you go to the bar, you order some wings.
Shell out all that money.
You have
beer
the beer
and wings. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So then you're spending probably $40, and if you're the Cowboys, that's times 8. I mean, that's $320 of just half the game. So you might as well just buy the ticket at that point. And I think that's where they know they get you. And that's the unfortunate part about everything in this world. To come back to a bigger, more global picture, is they set those prices because people pay those prices, And if we as a society did not pay or, decide that we were going to stand our ground, then the prices would come down. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. People are going to pay it, and it's going to stay at that price. And it might even get worse next season if enough people buy it.
I know.
So the price is outrageous, but what are you supposed to do?
I wonder what the multiple login thing is. Like if 3 people split it, for example, could we do multiple logins? This is going to have to be tested, I think. So stay tuned. I mean, I'm going to end up getting it, but I'm looking at sticker shock right now.
I know. I was going to say, I know you're going to end up with it, so you might as well just rip the Band-Aid right off.
That's right. Fortunately for your mother, it'll come out of my personal account. So, all right. So MLB's new pitch clock has cut about half an hour off game times this season, and that's led to an unintended consequence. Beer sales have been dropping in ballparks, so a few teams have extended their beer sales until the 8th inning rather than the 7th inning, where it's traditionally been cut off for several years in ballparks. Do you buy or sell them extending beer sales into the 8th inning?
So there's 2 sides of this argument. And the first one is, I saw a quote today from a Phillies pitcher, Matt Strom. I'm just going to kind of, say what he said and then give the other side of it. He said, the reason we stopped selling the alcohol in the 7th was to give our fans the time to sober up and drive home safe. So now with a faster paced game, if the game is going to finish quicker, would we not move the beer sell back to the 6th inning, right? Like it should technically.
He's saying it should go the other way.
It should go the other way because the games are faster. And so those last 2 innings are actually going to go by even quicker. And so you need to push it to the 6th inning to give, the fans time to sober up. Instead, we're going to go to the 8th. And now you're putting our fans and our families in risk by driving home with people who just drank a beer 22 minutes before the game ended. So that's the one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is you don't go to the bar and get hammered and then decide you're going to drive home.
That was going to be my point.
Why put yourself in that spot at the ballpark? It all comes down to responsibility at the end of the day. And so I do think.
Are you saying responsibility matters, Jesse? Isn't that
I do. I'm saying that it should be pushed back. I do buy that it should be pushed back because it's just like any other drinking setting. You don't drive unless you feel as a person you've done enough to sober up and be responsible. So, if that's the case, then you shouldn't be drinking to begin with. And so I'm okay with pushing the sales back. It's just you have to be a responsible person. So don't blame the ballpark for putting you in the spot. It's just like going to the bar and deciding when you need to cut yourself off at the end of the night.
And I'm not like a bar person, as you know, but like not now. In my younger days, I might have gone to one or two, but yeah, that is exactly it. What's the difference? You're talking about in the past you had a 3-hour game, so now you have a 2.5-hour game. So you're at the ballpark for 3 hours. How is that worse, like, than the guy who goes to the bar, or girl, whoever, who goes to the bar at 7 o'clock and stays till closing at 2 a.m. You're there almost twice as long at the bar. And by nature of being at the bar, you're going to be drinking more than if you're at the ballpark. It comes down to what you're talking about, regardless if it's ballpark, bar, wherever it happens to be. It is still on the consumer to be the responsible one. And because you're over 21, you're all adults. So be the responsible adult. And like John Kristofik said it, they should never cut off sales. Why should you have to? Because again, it's like it's a 3-hour, 2.5 to 3 hour period versus if you are actually at the bar, there are plenty of people who are there for 4, 5, 6, many more hours than at the ballpark. So what's the difference?
Yeah, and
there? I don't understand why they've ever cut it off.
In a lot of ballparks, I can't attest to every ballpark because I've not been to all of them. But like you look at some of the more popular ones like Wrigleyville and Fenway, like there's bars right across the street. People literally leave the ballpark and continue their drinking across the street at whatever bar they're at. So again, it's not on the ballpark to determine the responsibility of when it's time to stop drinking. It's up to you as the drinker to be like, oh, I need to get home here in a couple bit. I probably shouldn't have a beer in the 8th inning. And then maybe there's a guy who's completely sober who's like, you know what? I'd like one more beer in the 8th inning before this game ends. It's like,
well, yeah. And as Chi-Town says, in the Budweiser bleachers, he's talking about Wrigley. Most people just buy 2 or 3 beers in the 7th inning. And now, a lot of these vendors do have limits. Like you can only get 2, I believe, 2 at a time, basically. But I mean, you and your buddies can all go up and grab a couple and then go sit them down and, go get more. It's like, that's the way around it. And I mean, if you're at the ballpark and you're just drinking to get tanked anyway, it's like, what are you doing? The beer's so expensive to begin with, like it's like, I just want a couple extra beers. I'm not there to get tanked. I just want, the beer.
Right.
So. Speaking of baseball, Salt Lake City's pushing for an MLB expansion team. There are currently 30 Major League Baseball teams. So start with this. Do you buy or sell Major League Baseball expansion?
I do. And I read a really interesting, not to get too deep into this because I know we have, there's like a question within the question, but I would be in favor of expansion of 2 more teams, getting to 32. Divide it down the middle, have 16 on each, and then 4 divisions of 4 instead of 3 divisions of 5. That would be my proposal. And I read this really interesting piece on The Athletic, not trying to plug The Athletic, but they said if they were to expand, that they would consider, again, going to the 4 divisions of 4 and doing basically a division realignment and going basically geographically.
I've seen some of those proposals. I think it's very interesting.
You would go like the Cubs, for example, would have like Milwaukee, Minnesota, and the White Sox in their division because of, just geographically playing those teams. You play those teams the most, so put them the closest together. And then that way you would get more fans too. Like more Chicago fans would be inclined to go to Milwaukee, Minnesota, and Chicago, the White Sox, because they're so close. Like it would be
more packed
even
ballparks. Would you really want to put in Minnesota there? Like, wouldn't you want the Cardinals to be? I get that the Cardinals are closer to Kansas City and Minnesota is a little bit farther north, but I don't know.
I would like St. Louis just so that kind of rivalry and tradition, would continue on. But back to the original question, I am in agreement of expansion, but I really don't like the idea of Salt Lake City, to be honest with you. Some of the cities you start looking at.
Hang on. I'm not completely convinced that we need expansion, because there are some teams and, as thin as pitching gets stretched as it is, it's like, do we really have enough quality pitching and players for 2 more teams? Every time you expand, you water things down. But like that whole realignment thing does kind of intrigue me, especially with everyone looking for ways to make more money and trim some fat as well. Now, you were getting ready to jump right into the next question, so I'll go there with that one. If baseball does expand, so you've got, these are the potential cities: Las Vegas, Portland, Nashville, Montreal, Charlotte, Salt Lake City. Which of those two would you prefer to have teams in?
I think Las Vegas is oversaturated, and I get why it's so compelling because you have so many people there, and it's like it's just the easiest thing to do. People love to come to Vegas. It gives them something to do, right? But I'm sold. I'm sold on that. I think Vegas is too saturated. Portland doesn't interest me. Salt Lake City doesn't interest me. Like, there's a reason why you look at an MLB map. I mean, outside of California, there's like no teams on the western half. You got Colorado in the middle, and then Seattle up in the northwest corner. I mean, baseball is a predominantly eastern sport to begin with, and I think that's for a reason. Like, there's not a lot to do out there in those northwest cities. I don't think that you get it enough of appeal. Like, I think you look at some of the NBA teams up there, the Trailblazers and the Jazz. Like, they have issues themselves, and I know basketball is different than baseball, but I just don't see it being the same. If I had to go two cities that I would really like, I think Charlotte and Nashville would be at the top of my list for where my MLB expansion teams would be. And I think Nashville would be really good because there's already a ton to do there. They got, the Predators. They got the football stadium right down the road, and the Titans. I think they'd have no issues with dropping a baseball team there and having a lot of success.
They do support the hockey team there. I would be curious to see if they really support baseball, because I liken it a little bit to the Tampa area, because Nashville, as big as it's becoming, there are a lot of transplants in Nashville, just like, again, Tampa or Miami or wherever. They're fans of other teams, like they're Northeastern type people, Boston, New York, those kind of fans, Philly, and from that area. So, like, would they really support baseball? And that would be my question in all of these markets, because they are smaller markets. Like, there's talk about, the Raiders already left Oakland to go to Las Vegas. There's been talk over the last year or so about the A's doing the same because of the whole stadium issue that they've got there. And, wouldn't that be crazy if both Oakland teams bolted for Las Vegas? But in all of these, like the Pacific Northwest, I just don't see Portland and Seattle as viable. Like, you would have a closer rival, but I just don't see the population being able to support two major league teams like that, 100, for basically 81 home dates per season. I see that as an issue for all these. Montreal, for as long as the Expos were there, and Chi-Town said, bring the Expos back. I just, there's a reason they left Montreal to begin with. They had a lot of empty stadiums at the end, and they had a hard time trying to succeed. And you throw in the fact that you are, like, when you're talking about TV markets and all that stuff, does that do anybody in Major League Baseball any good? I don't know. So I'm not I wouldn't mind expansion and that realignment like you're talking about, but of these options, Nashville probably does make the most sense. I don't know about Charlotte. Las Vegas almost by default probably makes the most sense. And I'm not completely sold on that either. But just because of the, what the markets are, I have a hard time seeing them being able to support Major League Baseball year round.
Will you pull up my screen real quick?
Uh-oh. We're going to get a bonus. We're going to get a bonus whiteboard here.
So can you see it? It shows like this map of all the MLB stadiums.
Yes.
So to me, there's just like this, and you could see my mouse, like there's just this big hole in like the North Carolina, South Carolina region. And like, I mean, really, like outside of Florida, Atlanta is like the true only Southern team in all of baseball, right? So it's like, to me, there's just this big,
but all of those
gap
states,
here.
Most of those states, with the exception of Atlanta, are not densely populated. So, most of those
That's
fans,
true.
just like a lot of Iowa fans and Nebraska fans and even Arkansas and Oklahoma, like the Royals market to that whole area. And yes, by the way, Derek, I did see your comment. They should get a team in Kansas City. Ha ha ha. It did just win a World Series 8 years ago, but it'll probably be another 30 before they're a contender again. But I get it. Yeah. So
what about like Charleston, South Carolina? Is that too? Do you think that might be too dense?
I don't know. I I'm going to say it's probably not. South Carolina, market size. Charlotte's probably going to be your best bet of the two. But I just
and that's
really,
right on the border of the Carolinas too. So I think that's why you could get away with it. And you got,
right.
the Panthers are there. You got who else is in freaking the Charlotte Hornets are there. So it's just like they've proven they have the market for it. But unfortunately, what's going to happen is they're just going to drop it in Vegas because that's what's going to make them the most money easily. They know that people are going to show up to Vegas.